Okay, that's a video of this running. Now let's take a closer look at how I modified this and some of the other ones I have on video as well. I got some running videos of the ones I've done that have had some questions on what I do. And so this is just a quick overview of the parts I use and a couple of different methods I've used to modify them. So I'll get started here. So on this car, I'll kind of use an example. What I do is you just take off the body and then remove all the original components, and I replace them with some hobby grade components. This one has my brushless setup where I use a 25 amp brushless ESC, a little 2430 size brushless motor, a hobby grade receiver and controller. And to the chassis, what I do is I've got a video detailing the steering, but a quick overview of that is you just take off the top that holds the wheels in. There exposes a little box in here that has your steering motor in it. Take all that apart, hollow out the box, and you can fit a small servo in there. Again, see that video for more details. For the chassis, what I do is I hollow out the battery tray so I can access everything from underneath when it's all put back together. For the chassis, or for the body, for the lights, I just use one of these little RC light kits you can pick up. You do have to do a little modification to get these lights to work. These usually come with a 5mm front light and a 3mm rear light. And the light buckets on these are generally 3 in the rear, so you don't have to do anything to those, but the fronts are generally 3 as well, so you have to drill out the holes a little bigger in those light buckets to fit those bulbs in there. How I do that is a lot of times you can pop those little light buckets out and just use drill bits and slowly increase the size of those light buckets so you can get the hobby grade lights in there. To get the motor and modify the gearbox, that's a little bit trickier. But to get to the gearbox, you have to take off the rear wheels. Now that's kind of easy. These little center pieces pop out, so you can undo the screw in there to take off the rear wheels. There's a little brake caliper piece that just pops off. Do that to both sides. And then the rear suspension is held in on each side here. There's a little spring in there and a couple screws on each side. So just take those pieces out, and then you can pop the whole gearbox out. And the gearbox is a top piece and bottom piece, which is held in place by 4 screws. So take that apart, and you can take out the original motor. I do have to modify the gearbox to get the new motors in there. What I do is I have to cut out the side of the gearbox, because these motors, even though they're the same diameter as the original motor, they're a little longer. So you just have to cut that out. And then I secure it in there with a little piece of foam. Sometimes I'll use a zip tie around it as well if it still wiggles in there. But the brushless 2430 size motor or a brushed 370 size motor will fit in the gearbox without any trouble. I use the original pinion gear. There's a little plastic gear off the original motor, just slides off, and it's a snug fit on there, so it's the same size that fits these motors as well, so you just put that back on there. But if you did want to increase the pinion size, WL Toys, the 20A scale gears will fit on your motor, as well as the pitch of the gears match the ones in here, because they're pretty small. But these come in, you get a little package. They got 4 different sizes, so depending on what kind of top speed you want to get out of it, you can use one of those if you want. I found that with the brushless setup with the original pinion, you get pretty decent speed out of it. And with a couple of the other cars, they're a little slower, but it depends on the car whether you want to do that or not. So this is the one method I use, the brushless. A couple other methods I've done is I use a real simple method with the brushed motor. You just use a 370 size brushed motor. I use a WL Toys ESC receiver combo. What I like about these is they have a 3-wire servo connector. They just run off the balance port of a 2S LiPo battery. And then the motor just plugs in here. It's like one of these little white type connectors. So sometimes you can find a brushed motor with a similar connector. This one's a little fatter than what would fit in there, so you can just pop that little white piece out. So that's what I did for this. And then to power the servo and the lights, I just get one of these little 3-wire servo Y splitter. So this just plugs in here, and the two pieces come off. One powers the servo, one powers the lights. I use that for my lighter weight ones, like the Porsche GT3 or the Ferrari 458. Those are a little bit lighter Rastar RCs. Again, they're not as heavy because they don't have as much interior, but I had to use a different method to give more power to like my LaFerrari and my GT500 because those are heavier, a little bigger. So for that, I just kind of use similar method, but I incorporate a WL Toys ESC receiver combo from the 20 or the 18 scale, this is the standard one, to power the motor. Now for that, you have to get the right connectors for your motor. Like the standard brushed motor connectors work with this. And I use just this for the motor because this has a 5-wire servo connector, and most of my small servos are 3-wire. But what I do for that is I use this to power the motor, and I use the WL Toys ESC receiver for the servo here and the lights here with that Y splitter. And why that works good is the battery with the little red JST connector. This will connect for the motor, and this part connects to this. The balance port connects to this for the steering and the lights. And what's interesting about the WL Toys is this controller will bind to both of these ESC combos at the same time. So you just power these up, then turn on your remote, and it will connect to both. So your steering will be controlled by this one and the lights, and the motor will be controlled by this one. One other thing that you may have to do is check the spring rates in the back of this, because sometimes the springs are pretty stiff from the original car. Sometimes they're really stiff, and if they're too stiff, the back will just bounce around more, and it'll be hard for it to get a grip because it's got that differential in there. So what I do sometimes is I'll either replace the springs or just cut that spring in half, stretch it out to where it'll ride a little softer. All right, so feel free to check out my channel for these running. Again, my F40 and my Audi R8, I've used the brushless setup on. The LaFerrari and the GT500 Mustang, I've used this the combo method on that. And the Porsche GT3 and the Ferrari 458, I've used kind of the simpler method with just the ESC receiver combo off the 28 scale in this. And then also on the LaFerrari and the Mustang, I did use a bigger pinion in that. Okay, that's about everything I could think of at the moment. So feel free to add a comment if you have other questions, but hopefully this will give you an idea of what I do and maybe give you some ideas of what you can do if you wanted to tackle this project yourself. Thanks for watching. All right, that's the F40 all put back together. I'll kind of show you how everything fits in here. Again, I like to access everything from underneath the car. So you just undo the little on-off button, slide that up, open the door, and I've got everything in here. There's the battery. Over here's the ESC, and then the receiver's right there. So it all tucks in there, nice and neat. All back together. Thanks for watching. Enjoy this video and all the other ones I've done.